If you're anything like me, you are very skeptical in a healthy way about what all of this will become when it comes to Obamagate, what was formerly the Russia Collusion Hoax. Will Obama be arrested? Will he be tried for treason, prosecuted, imprisoned, or even more? We're not sure yet, but what I do want to address right now is presidential immunity. Because here's what's going on right now when it comes to that. I made this tweet the other day about Obama saying it's time to arrest him. And what you can see here is a comment from obviously a very liberal Obama worshiper. This is the thought process right now. And the reason why it's the thought process is because this became a big deal for President Donald Trump when the liberals were trying to use their weaponized lawfare against Trump to imprison him by any means necessary. And so the Supreme Court took a look at everything and determined that a president acting under the provisions and purview of his office and his job is immune to facing consequences for judgment calls and decisions made within the scope of his powers. And what I want to address right now is the fact that Obama would have that same presidential immunity because of this SCOTUS ruling, and that's fair. Presidents have a hard job with a lot of judgment calls, and they shouldn't be held necessarily to account for making judgment calls on the fly and making decisions that turn out to be perhaps not the best with the benefit of hindsight. However, the SCOTUS ruling right here, as you can see in Trump v. United States 2024, still concludes that no one, including the president, is above the law. And we heard people like Obama himself even say this during this period of time. And Trump v. United States 2024 goes on to clarify that presidential immunity for alleged crimes applies only to official acts within constitutional authority, with absolute immunity for core duties and presumptive immunity for other official acts. Treason, however, by its nature, typically involves actions outside of official duties, which would not be covered by immunity. That is crucial to understand. A president is not immune to committing treason, especially with the very definition of what treason is. Treason is a federal crime in the United States as stated in Title 18 U.S. Code 2381. It is defined as levying war against the United States or adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Whoever, owing allegiance to the United States, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death, or be imprisoned and fined and incapable of holding any U.S. office. What's important to note with this when it comes to treason is that it can be expanded into a whole host of similarly related federal crimes right here. Sedition is one of the main ones that we're looking at in this case when it comes to former President Barack Obama, aka seditious conspiracy. And these terms are going to be important. This is defined as two or more people conspiring to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the U.S. government or prevent it from carrying out its lawful functions. And the idea of this seditious conspiracy is reinforced by the current director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard herself. Listen carefully to the vocabulary she chooses to use because it is crucial to understanding what the Republicans are playing here when it comes to Obamagate and everything else.
What we saw play out here was President Trump was elected by the American people in 2016, shocking most people in the United States, and apparently even Russia and Putin didn't think that he would win. Instead of accepting that this is the will of the people, what we saw is President Obama convening his national security team and concocting this contrived false narrative through the production of this intelligence community assessment in January 2017 with the specific intent of subverting the will of the American people and trying to delegitimize President Trump's election and therefore everything that he had been charged to do by the American people over the next 4 years. So, yes, this is a treasonous conspiracy that subverts the will of the American people because you look at the action. They manufactured a hoax. They manufactured these lies, published it as though it were true, propagated this through the media to the American people. And then what happened next? The Mueller investigation, years-long Mueller investigation was launched. You had 2 impeachments coming from Congress. You had a raid on President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago by the FBI. You had smears and attacks and investigations not only against President Trump, but against his family, his senior officials within his administration.
Notice how she, again, is leaning on the words treasonous, conspiracy being one of the most important words to focus on here, because the other form of defense that the liberal Obama worshipers are bringing up when it comes to this to protect their God is that the statute of limitations has run out. But when it comes to what a conspiracy is an agreement between 2 or more people to commit a crime at some time in the future. Criminal law in some countries, or for some conspiracies, may require that at least one overt act be undertaken in furtherance of that agreement to constitute an offense. That is 100% true here in America. You do actually have to take an action towards that criminal conspiracy in order for it to be a chargeable offense. On December 9th of 2016, Obama and his administration 100% did that. And the whole thing with conspiracy, the reason why that word is being thrown around a lot by Tulsi Gabbard, and if Pam Bondi knows what she's doing, which is questionable, that word will continue to be used. Treasonous conspiracy, seditious conspiracy, is because with a conspiracy, the statute of limitations runs much longer than 5 years in the sense that the conspiracy is ongoing or can be ongoing. So long as one member of the conspiracy continues the narrative of the conspiracy, in this case, continues committing crimes with that conspiracy, in this case, pushing the Russia hoax or taking action in regards to the Russia hoax like they did with President Donald Trump, then that 5-year statute of limitation mark keeps moving to match the most recent time that that crime was committed. And in this case, the Russian hoax is a crime that was originally started December 9th, 2016. Therefore, the 5-year statute of limitations would have theoretically ended in 2021. However, the liberals kept pushing this Russia hoax, and they kept taking actions towards President Donald Trump with this Russia hoax, pushing that deadline for the statute of limitations further and further. This is an NPR article from March 16th, 2021, and there are more articles even from 2022. And let's not forget that when it comes to President Donald Trump, the Biden administration, and the lawfare that they weaponized against Trump after his first term had concluded, some of that was still based around Russia collusion. This was 2 months into the Biden presidency. And as soon as Trump was out of office, they went harder on the Russia collusion hoax rather than backing off. You can see here in this article, a new report by the U.S. intelligence community on Tuesday says Russia sought to help former President Donald Trump in last year's presidential election. So once again, they were accusing him of more Russian interference in the 2020 election where Biden won. The central message is the same one the intelligence community has been delivering since last August. Russia wanted Trump to win, though its effort was not the same scale as in the 2016 election. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They raided Trump's home, in part because of the Russia collusion hoax. They were still acting on this hoax that they knew was a hoax the entire time and using it to weaponize the law in the form of lawfare against President Donald Trump and his family. And it was all a hoax created on December 9th during their secret Russia meeting. And the shadiness of all of this, the timeline of all of this, the monthly POTUS briefing for Obama on December 8th, 2016 was canceled because the intelligence community concluded that there was no Russia interference with the election that President Trump won. And they didn't like that, so they canceled it. And then the next day they met on the 9th and they created the Russia collusion hoax. And then they intentionally leaked it to media sources who would run with this narrative at their will. And I specifically want to point this out because you can try to say the intelligence community acted separately from President Obama, as they often do. They have their own departments that does their own work at the advisement of Obama, but not always completely under his discretion. However, DNI Tulsi Gabbard is not allowing that narrative to stand. In this tweet from her, she says, "Lie. The Obama administration's January intelligence community assessment was an independent intelligence community product produced with an apolitical analysis." The truth? Obama ordered the intelligence community to create an intelligence community assessment they knew was false, promoting a contrived narrative with the intent of undermining the legitimacy and power of a duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. Obama was in on it, and he directly ordered this. This is why he's in a great deal of trouble right now. This is why his presidential immunity will not spare him from possible charges and even imprisonment. And because of how many people were involved, it all goes back to what I defined the term conspiracy of: an ongoing criminal event that continues to push the statute of limitations further and further. Treason has no statute of limitations, and therefore, for many of these people in the Obama administration, there's really truly only one way out. You can avoid being wrapped up and charged in a criminal conspiracy by becoming a whistleblower. And I expect over the coming weeks that more and more, probably lower level Obama officials will come out as whistleblowers so that they can avoid being charged with very high and heinous crimes. According to Tulsi Gabbard, this all started because of a whistleblower already.
Shortly after coming into this position as Director of National Intelligence, I formed a special team to investigate this issue. I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. There were a lot of deep state obstacles that exist still within the intelligence community. But ultimately, we had a whistleblower who came forward that brought some critical pieces to this story. And we were able to discover these documents and find these documents that really pointed to President Obama directing his national security leaders in James Clapper and John Brennan to manufacture this January 2017 intelligence community assessment. That January 2017 assessment that President Obama had manufactured with fake intelligence in order to achieve, knowingly using false intelligence in order to get to the conclusion that he wanted to promote to the American people that Putin had acted in favor of President Trump winning that election in 2016.
This is not going to go away. Obama's in big trouble. And it honestly feels good, at the very least, to be vindicated as a Trump supporter after all this time of having to put up with the obnoxiously moronic liberals online who kept insisting that Trump was bought and paid for by Vladimir Putin. What are your thoughts and opinions, though? Are the Republicans going to screw this up? This is now up to the Trump Department of Justice. This is Pam Bondi's chance for redemption. What will happen here, though? That will remain to be seen. Subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. Unless you worship Obama every morning as soon as you wake up, you get down on your hands and knees and praise the poster of him you have in your bedroom. At which point, if you do, I would advise that you dislike this video and please never come back to this channel. Thanks so much for watching.